was the first time I've used this one, so I'm good. Hello everyone, I'm Jesse Osborne, editor of Food Manufacturing, and I would like to welcome everyone to today's webinar. Today's presentation is titled Disruption Ahead, the Role of ERP for Today's Food and Beverage Processors. From changing customer demands and ever-increasing food safety requirements to new distribution channels and merger and acquisition activity, there's never been a more competitive or disruptive environment facing today's food and beverage processors. This Best Practices 1-hour webinar puts the focus on these disruptive trends. The session will share how forward-looking processors leverage enterprise systems to streamline and improve processes in today's rapidly changing marketplace. The session looks at common challenges, including a lack of integrated tools and automated systems, recipe management, document control, and other mission-critical functions. From today's webinar, attendees will leave with an understanding of business issues and trends facing today's food and beverage processors, best practices in automating food safety reporting, compliance, and product development, and strategies to move away from siloed, standalone systems to automated platforms that scale and drive true business process transformation. While you are listening to the presentation today, I would like to encourage everyone to submit questions at any time by typing into the designated comment section on your screen. Following the presentation, we will have a question and answer segment where today's speakers will answer individual questions submitted by members of the audience. Remember that today's webinar will also be available on demand so you can view it again at your convenience or share it with friends and colleagues. You will receive an email with a link to access the webinar within the next few days. Now, I would like to welcome today's speakers. Richard Sides, Chief Operating Officer at Ultra Consultants, has deep operational experience guiding manufacturing and distribution organizations by improving their business processes and supporting information systems. Richard's experience includes operations leadership, supply chain, quality management consulting, ERP system implementation, and serving in a variety of senior executive management roles in food processing, including Kraft Foods, and leading enterprise organizations. Michael Kozlowski has been working with JustFood for over 9 years and managed the JustFood database, with the majority of his time working with each department head to streamline processes, as well as reporting and analyzing data. As a member of the product team, Michael uses experience from both sides of the fence to bring customers relevant and effective products they need. I will now turn it over to our speakers. Enjoy the webinar, everyone.
Hi, everyone. This is Rich Sides from Ultra Consultants. Hope everyone's doing well today. So it's interesting. I recently read a book by a gentleman by the name of Thomas Friedman. He wrote a number of books. Originally, I got introduced to him through The World is Flat, but now his most recent book, Thank You for Being Late. And in that book, he talks about the fact that for the first time in really the history of mankind, the rate of change that we're going through is actually exceeding an individual's ability to adapt to that. And so that's put substantial onus on business leaders and industry to figure out how to establish frameworks to deal with that rapid rate of change. And it's causing us to really take a fresh look at how we operate within our enterprises and how we collaborate really across the globe. So today we're going to talk about industry trends. I'm going to go into that in a lot more detail, and then some of the common challenges. And then I'm going to turn it over to Michael from the Industry Built. We'll talk about some things that are necessary to support those challenges. So just real quick, 10 seconds on Ultra. So we were founded in 1994. We have clients throughout North America and actually internationally as well. We're 100% vendor independent. And really what we focus on is strictly manufacturing and distribution, and food and beverage in particular is a really key vertical for us. So we have consultants all over the United States and many engagements that we're doing with food and beverage clients. We've already kind of covered my background. And Michael, do you want to just say a real quick thing about your slide?
Sure, yeah. Hi, everyone. So really quick, JustFood ERP, we're a purpose-built ERP solution for the food industry. We've been around for almost 20 years. We know ERP, and we make it easy for our customers. So if you're looking to get in touch with us or find out a little bit more information, you can reach us at justfooderp.com. Thanks. Talk to you later.
This is Michael's photo. Sharp-looking guy. Okay, industry trends. Now, as I mentioned from Thomas Freeman, there's a lot of change going on in the world, and we're going to kind of break that down into some key themes. The first being changing consumer preferences. The second, which I think we're all familiar with, which is increasing global and safety regulations. Technologies are evolving, and as well as the actual food engineering and nutritional progress is moving forward by leaps and bounds as well. So focusing in on the business, I use the term big food to kind of be synonymous with the large processed food manufacturers, Kraft Heinz, for example. And what we've seen over the last 5 years is a continued erosion in market share and profitability, frankly, within large food processors, culminating in a few weeks ago in an announcement by Kraft Heinz in which they posted huge losses, slashed the dividend, et cetera. And this is a result of changing consumer habits. So consumers are moving away from processed food to organic, non-GMO, fresh, et cetera. And with that, that's putting a lot of pressure on big food, and has resulted in, frankly, in us now working with many small and mid-sized and rapidly growing food processors and folks throughout the food chain that are responding to these changes. So it's interesting, and out of that, the exit strategy of our clients is actually changing as well, because big food is looking to innovate, and in a way that they're innovating is through acquisition of smaller upstart food companies, as well as private equity is now much more in the mix. So the exit strategies have moved from go public to be acquired by PE firms, as well as to become integrated into large food companies. The stakes have also really increased as well. So the responsibilities and accountabilities of the officers of companies, food safety has become a huge thing. Regulatory and visibility and transparency have become much more apparent, and the stakes are really big. So things that we're going to be talking about today have real-world implications that can impact livelihoods and legal ramifications. So Food Safety Modernization Act, et cetera, is all really coming into effect us. So within food and beverage, business trust transparency issues, big food's in search of growth, and the rise of entrepreneurial companies. And then, frankly, the last thing is new ways of selling. So, for example, you'll have seen that recently Amazon has gone on an acquisition spree and is really through its acquisitions securing new outlets and really starting to look at how to innovate direct to retailer aspects to the food supply chain. So within technology, there was a study, there's a joint venture going on right now between IBM and Maersk. And one of the things that they did was they did a study and looked at the cost of the paperwork and record keeping that was necessary to ship from South Africa up into Northern Europe. And what they found is that the cost of the paperwork and customs work and traceability and all those types of things, that cost of that documentation actually exceeded the cost of the shipment in itself. And that was kind of the basis for thoughts around blockchain. So what is blockchain? It's really just a proprietary way or a secure way to ensure traceability from the source all the way through to the consumer and in a non-modifiable way. So each step of the way along the journey from raw materials through processing to the consumer, blockchain is a platform that's sitting behind it, capturing all that information and aggregating in a way that the next person in the chain can't modify the prior records. So think in terms of like from a future state, being able to walk into a grocery store and with an app on your cell phone, scan an individual serial ID on a specific package and be able to look at the entire history in terms of where that product came from. And that has severe ramifications in terms of if regulatory and compliance pushes us to that, what's the implications related to vendor sourcing, which is a competitive differentiation, et cetera. So blockchain and being able to have your enterprise and your systems interact with blockchain similar to EDI and others is a pretty important thing to be thinking about in the future because it will be progressing. Artificial intelligence. So we'll talk about the need for safety in terms of food tampering prevention, et cetera. And out of that, it's interesting that there's been some technologies now that are coming out that are merging artificial intelligence and video, et cetera, so that your record keeping could not just be paper-based forms and capturing, but actual video associated with your individual work orders, work steps, et cetera. And in this photo, it's a little tough to see, but the artificial intelligence is actually focusing in and noting and identifying food compliance issues for future remediation. Allergens is really huge. Clean in place technologies continue to be optimized. So lots of really interesting things on the technology front. So now you merge that with cloud services. So the need for the security and the global onslaught, so to speak, in terms of hacking of systems and potentially impacting record keeping, et cetera, is driving clients into the cloud. And in effect, at this point with Ultra, well over half of our new customers that we're onboarding are having a preference to execute their enterprise strategies through cloud services, including like Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, et cetera. And so that has some implications on your technology framework and security framework and collaboration frameworks between your applications. And so how do we deal with that? Those are some things that we need to think about. So that's a real quick, some of the major technology disruption trends. And so now moving ahead to product development. Food labeling is now definitely coming through a next generation. We can expect at some time in the very near future that there will be mandates around GMO or non-GMO labeling to come through, getting proper definition of non-GMO. As we all know, the product labels themselves have changed, right? So as you develop products, having your nutritional statements being adaptive to changes in formulation and streamlining that approval flow, right? So the new label is out. It's a cleaner, crisper label, but is also changing consumer preference by calling attention to some specific things. So for example, new sugars added, right? That's new. So the amount of sugar that's being added, broken out from the total carbohydrates, is now keying consumers in on how much sugar is actually in this. Is dairy in it, et cetera. And so these things are driving changes in the product development. And that has ramifications on your systems requirements, right? So if you're innovating your formulas and driving that to a release to the consumer, that has implications on changing the formula in the system, changing the formula in the label, and how does all this react, and some pretty key impacts there. Protein is becoming interesting. So the growth of meat stack. So on one hand, protein is really driving forward, but on the other hand, alternatives to meat in terms of different ways to acquire protein. Insects are actually really coming along, and we're going to be seeing that. So all these again are putting pressure on big food, and they're putting pressure across the supply chain in terms of innovation within food. So whereas historically you could have a product set that was fairly static, the design to deploy process within companies is now paramount. Continuous innovation is really key. So with that, kind of moving on to regulatory. So within the plant, so the Food Safety Modernization Act, sorry about that, there we go. So Food Safety Modernization Act, what I'm showing in the top right there we go. In the top right there is actually a photo of the SQF compliance system for one of our clients historically, right? So it's a series of paper binders and printed forms, et cetera. With the Food Safety Modernization Act now, there's a recall, time to recall, audit programs, et cetera, that as that company scales, their ability to support that recall in under an hour is a challenge, right? And as they continue to scale, it becomes more of a challenge. So whereas historically the quality systems have tended to be separate from the business systems, the level of compliance, the level of traceability that's required under FSMA and the accredited third-party certifications like SQF is becoming really critical. And that's driving our customers to now look to merge their food safety compliance programs and their business systems into an integrated set of processes with integrated control points, et cetera. So it's something to think about, that if your compliance program is separate from your business systems, as FSMA continues to take on and as information technology continues to improve, you can expect increased mandates relative to the granularity of traceability and prevention controls and those types of things. So merging blockchain, merging inside the organization, traceability, and issues management and how to mitigate all that is becoming much bigger. And a really interesting concern is that the FDA is now implementing swabathons where they will actually come in and take hundreds of swabs inside organizations, and they now actually have an ability to do kind of like some DNA footprinting of specific bacteria and pathogens, and be able to, via that DNA, ascertain the original source of that, so they can backtrack to specific organizations. So again, if your traceability isn't in place, if your compliance programs aren't in place, it's a big risk. And this swabathon is actually a leading nonconformance to FSMA. So they can take random swabs at particular places, and it's just really putting pressure on food and beverage companies. So with that, I'm going to jump ahead here to jumping ahead, let's talk about how do we handle this. Okay, so as we look at our clients, many of them have standalone systems and standalone kinds of functions. And the challenge there is that when systems aren't talking, the traceability, transparency, and adaptability to all this incoming change becomes really difficult, right? So what we encourage is to take a different kind of a look within companies and look at it from what we call business process management perspective. So we talked about the innovation of the product line. So how to go from product conception all the way to a release. That's known as design to deploy processes. Quote to cash, how to take a quote, how to take an order, how to fill an order, how to ship an order. Those are integrated processes that a lot of times will stripe across companies. And it gets more complicated where our clients are involved in mergers and acquisitions activities. So we'll have 2-3 companies that have been put together or more with different sets of systems, and that all needs to kind of be looked at from a continuous process basis. Where you have standalone systems and siloed systems, driving that type of change becomes more and more difficult, right? So lack of integration in terms of master data strategies, that translates into keying in one system, printing things out, keying in another system, sending emails, et cetera. So that's a common challenge, that if you don't have an integrated system strategy of some sort, having the adaptability and changeability that you need to deal with all the change that we've been talking about becomes really a challenge. So within recipe and formula management, it's really important that your recipe formula management be integrated in with the balance of the business systems in the company. Your recipes have to be validated. You have to have formed supplier qualification, and those documentations need to be integrated in and need to be confirmed and tested prior to release. Planning and scheduling is really a challenge now because of allergens, right? So sequencing of product to ensure that you don't have cross-contamination between products is difficult. Fresh is really starting to introduce a lot more complexities in the supply chain in terms of shorter shelf lives. And all of that then is putting pressure on the ability to forecast, right? So pressure on accuracy of forecasting is much higher, and that's translating into having to make bets relative to product levels, impacts of promotions and seasonality, right? So your forecasting system has to take all this into effect as well. So those are some of the challenges that our clients are focusing on. And our mission at Ultra is to come up with a system strategy that allows our customers to mitigate and to establish flexible frameworks within the business. And one of the great companies that we've worked with that can help with that as well is Industry Build and the JustFood product. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael.
Great. Thank you, Rich. Great insight into the food industry and upcoming trends to keep an eye on. I have to say I'm especially intrigued by the blockchain and what that could mean for our industry in the future. And in fact, we already have some R&D folks on our team looking into that, seeing how it could help us out. So thank you. So once again, my name is Michael Kozlowski. I'm the product manager here at ABM and Industry Built on the JustFood product. And so I'll continue off where Rich left me here, and so let's jump right into it. We'll start talking about some common challenges, and keeping that in mind, there is a lot of that to keep in mind when selecting the ERP platform. Rich mentioned there was compliance, planning, scheduling, forecasting, all critical pieces to a successful ERP platform. Continuing with that theme, I'd like to focus on 3 other points that you see up on the screen that we hear a lot about from both prospects and customers, and how a food-specific ERP platform like JustFood can help. So food safety, quality, and quality specific to within our ERP system, and getting mobile and transacting in real time. Those are the things I'd like to discuss today, so let's get started. It may seem obvious that food safety is important for a food manufacturer, and of course it is, or at least it should be. But for those of you that have or had your food safety process completely paper-based or put together across multiple Excel spreadsheets, can agree that food safety requires a lot of hands-on management. If you think back to that photo Rich shared with the shelf stacked with binders, I'm sure we've all seen some version of that before. The images on the slide here represent a very cartoony but typical manufacturing facility with inventory coming in, used in production, packaged, stored, and shipped to a customer. This simple example may not ring true for everyone, but the idea is that from the moment you introduce inventory that people will consume, or that will touch inventory that people will consume, you need to track it. Each step from receiving to shipping, you'll need to know where that lot of flour was used or which production order used that lot of film for packaging. And lot tracking, it is one thing, but you also need to be able to trace a lot quickly and confidently. In the event of a recall, from the moment your vendor notifies you about a contaminated pallet of salt, let's say, how quickly can you trace that lot, or lots if there's multiple on that pallet, to identify which production order it was used in and where you might have shipped it? Once you have that list of customers, how quickly can you notify them? Are you sure you contacted them all? Using an ERP like JustFood allows you to trace all places of use, all shipments, and all customers affected by the contaminated lot in seconds. And within a minute of that, you've already contacted them all via email. JustFood really gives you the ability to act quickly and with confidence. Now let's talk a little bit about QA. And I always like to ask this question, but how many of you have seen a QA tech, or supervisor walk into a receiving area with a clipboard full of paperwork, ready to inspect a delivery truck or new inventory that was just received? How many of you have seen where all that paperwork goes afterwards? Once again, think back to that picture with the big binders on the shelf. I'm sure we've all seen it, and some of you may have even done it. It's very common in the food manufacturing industry. It's also very time-consuming and can be difficult to retrieve at a later date. Having an integrated QA module is crucial these days for staying organized, up to date, and really having the ability to trigger audits automatically and retrieve past ones quickly. We'll touch back on this again a little bit later on. I want to save some of the content for a future slide coming up. So let's move on to the next common challenge. And that's going to be mobility and real time. And this is probably one of the ones that I hear about the most, to be honest, especially in recent years. Planning over, let's say, 100, 200, whatever it might be, small batch production orders in one day can be challenging enough without the right ERP. And take it from me, I've done it. My past experiences working on the client side of this, we've done things like that. But trying to do so without an accurate picture of what your inventory looks like can make it even more challenging. The same thing can be said about a single long-run production order that lasts days. If you don't know what you have in available inventory to consume or ship on the warehouse side, things can get messy. A modern ERP solution like JustFood gives you the ability to transact in real time, which has a big effect on the rest of your facility. Real-time inventory receiving, consumption, output, or even inventory movements, and shipping, for that matter, means that at any one time, you know how much inventory you have and where it is. This is information that can help you forecast with later on, and everyone has to forecast at some point. With real-time data and JustFood's forecasting tools, you have more control and confidence to keep a tighter grasp on inventory, freeing up that ever so crucial warehouse space and cash flow. And having a mobile ERP system allows you to do things much easier. Think back to those previous common challenges of food safety and QA. You can do those much easier on the go. A big part of being mobile with your ERP means having a warehouse management system, which I'll talk about in a minute. But that's not all it means. It also means being able to log into your data remotely. An internet connection and a device with a browser is all you need to get connected to JustFood and manage things remotely. Being able to pull up your ERP system and report on production or sales info can be very useful for the always-on-the-go executive. But what about staff in the warehouse or on the production floor? They need to be mobile too, just maybe not accessing reports, but instead they need help with receiving, shipping, inventory handling, and producing on the go, which actually leads us to the next topic, and that's going to be getting into some ERP must-haves. So we've got 4 listed here, and these 4 points of an ERP are really 4 points that most modern food manufacturers need in today's modern connected world. Having these tools gives you an extra step to stay ahead of the curve and adapt to new industry regulations. We heard a little bit about that, increased demand, and insights to potential new opportunities. We'll talk about a warehouse management system, business intelligence, or really analytics. We'll talk more about that integrated quality module, and having the capability to take on more as your business grows. So let's jump into a warehouse management system, or WMS. A warehouse management system is what will give your warehouse and production teams the ability to do their jobs quickly and efficiently. Your warehouse staff can receive inventory in real time from vendors as the trucks pull up to the doors. No more fumbling around to find paperwork, then dealing with data entry sometime after the truck leaves, which I'm sure we've all done. Post-consumption and output straight from the production floor as it happens. Put that finished good inventory away in the warehouse where it needs to be, and tell the system where you put it. The warehouse staff can then open their pick lists on their handheld devices, select the next available order, and go prepare it as per the pick instructions from the handheld device itself. Once again, all in real time. Enable your staff to perform scheduled and unscheduled physical inventory counts right at the bin, directly entering data into the system and allowing them to relocate inventory throughout the warehouse as needed in real time. Things like bin replenishment is available with these handheld devices. And in a warehouse, you can complete your quality audits. You can even put inventory on hold or take it off hold as required. A solid warehouse management system like JustFood Floor gives you the capability to be able to do all of that. And most importantly, once again, in real time. Next thing I like to talk about are analytics, or you heard me say business intelligence before. So introducing analytics to your database will go a long way in helping a business understand its data. Day in and day out, food manufacturers are collecting data in all areas of their business, but usually reporting on the basics like finance, sales, and production. Common areas to report on, most of us are doing it one way or another. We often hear that food businesses want to report on more than just those basics, but often are limited to the kind of data available to pull from their current system or the type of development needed to create custom reports with their current system. This really inspired us to build out our latest product offering, Analytics for JustFood. Based on Microsoft's Power BI software, our analytics tool includes 7 templates across the major areas of the business, and you can see them listed up on the screen. And it's self-service and it's on demand. So as a JustFood customer, the moment you get your hands on our analytics package, it'll take you about 10 minutes to connect your database to the reporting templates and instantly have access to over 250 visualizations with your data. When I say visualizations, I mean things like tables, charts, graphs, maps, anything you can think of that could be a visual tool included in Power BI. So think of that, your data within 10 minutes across over 250 visualizations, possibly telling you information that you didn't already know. Not to mention, there's an additional more than 200 filters, sliders, selectors, all to help you slice and dice your data as needed. Again, all within about 10 minutes. But not everyone's going to use every visual. That's a lot of visuals to go through. And on the flip side, not every business will find everything they need within those templates. So each user is going to have the option to customize these templates. And that's exactly what we've done. And getting back to the self-service piece. This is what really makes it a true self-service reporting solution. If you can't find the exact visual you need, you can bring it in yourself and customize your dashboard to include the visuals that are important to you across all 7 templates. It's a really powerful tool. And kind of jumping back into quality again, we talked a little bit about this, but carrying on with it, with a properly integrated quality module in your ERP system, you have the ability to create audits or put inventory on hold, all on demand. You can also use events to trigger quality audits at specific moments. Let's say an inventory inspection at receiving, for example, or something like making sure that you remember to take the temperature of the specific product at production output. It can be a critical control point that has to be done and will prevent you from the next transaction until complete, or it can be a quality audit that gets created and will sit there waiting for it to be completed at a later time. Either way, the important part is that that audit is attached to that receipt or that production order or whatever other process it is you're working on in your facility, even after it's completed. So it's all in one place. It'll remain attached to that transaction so you can pull it up easily, quickly, whenever you might need it. We also, or I should say, JustFood also includes an integrated quality audit wizard, which allows you to go through each quality measure one by one in specific order to complete that quality audit. Or you have the option to open up a page format so you can see all the quality measures, temperature checks, size measurements, whatever it might be for that specific quality audit, all at one time, and you complete it in whatever order is needed. Everything in one place, and no need for spreadsheets to stay organized. That being said, you do, of course, have the choice to export any bit of data in the database into a spreadsheet should you need it. So you are done using them if you want to, but if you need it, you do have the ability to use Excel. Talk a little bit about scalable modern solutions. If you're listening to this webinar, chances are you're looking for an ERP system, and chances are you have plans to grow and improve your business, whether it's production volume, more customers, and bigger shipments, or simply just staying compliant. Those are a few examples. Whatever the reason, you don't want to be limited to the kind of growth you potentially can take on. So ensuring your ERP partner will allow you to scale up to those, to include more locations, let's say, add more employees, and even more companies. That's going to be very important. With an ERP like JustFood, you can do just that. Grow and improve your business without worrying if your ERP can handle it. Our modern solution is capable of scaling up as you grow, and you'll benefit from the latest technology available. Stay connected wherever you are by logging into your database from your computer, tablet, phone, all remotely from home, or from the airport, on a train, or on the beach. The web-based user interface will automatically auto-size and auto-format to the device you're using to ensure you keep all the functions across all devices. Easy and intuitive, manage your database wherever you are, of course, as long as you have an internet connection. So moving on, talk a little bit about common challenges and some of the ERP Must Haves that we're seeing a lot today. Excuse me. But I like to finish off my slides by going through a few examples of how JustFood ERP has helped a few of our customers over the years who had similar issues that we covered today. We'll talk about Food for Tots, Creative Food Ingredients, and VitaPact. So getting started with Food for Tots here. Food for Tots is an Ontario-based catering company that provides healthy, delicious, and child-friendly meals and snacks to child care centers and schools. Excuse me. They manage, believe it or not, 97 different allergens, and they did not have a system at the time that was able to accurately manage these allergens and provide clear instructions to the production team on the shop floor. The company was using 3 separate business systems to run its business, which led to data integrity issues, as you can imagine, and no real visibility into inventory levels, financials, and production costs. Again, I'm sure we can all relate to that on some level, having gone from a maybe older ERP system or no ERP system at all. But since going live on JustFood, Food for Tots was able to automate its allergen replacement process for each and every individual child it serves. They go through every single bill of material for that day and automatically assign allergen replacements with 100% accuracy. I find that to be incredible. By moving its data and workflows into one integrated ERP, they were able to gain visibility into its operations, which led to food cost savings and the ability to make better business decisions. I have to say, I absolutely love that story. And Creative Food Ingredients is another customer of ours. They're based out of upstate New York. They offer proprietary formulation services with third-party labeling, custom manufacturing, and private labeling in a number of direct consumption formats. All that to say, they make some of the best cookies you've ever had. They were dealing with a complete disconnect between the company's finance and production departments, which, as you can imagine, ultimately led to inventory and traceability issues. Production data was being entered into the system 24 hours after it was being used. So the procurement team was waiting a day before having any visibility into inventory levels so that they can forecast and purchase the requirements for the next day's production. Since going live on JustFood, Creative Foods has been able to break down data silos to create more fluid workflows across the entire organization. Excuse me. This real-time data allows the company to respond to customer orders quickly and more efficiently. Another great story. And lastly, last customer I'll talk about, based out of California, VitaPact Citrus Products is a processor of citrus and kiwi fruit products for food and beverage companies around the world. Their signature products include frozen orange and lemon items for the bakery industry and all-natural juice concentrates for the beverage industry. You might be familiar with their products without even knowing it. They provide a lot of the orange and lemon flavors for a lot of those beers out there. Driving force behind their search for an ERP system was the need to move away from inefficient systems and employee spreadsheets that required, once again, manual data entry. Item traceability was another consideration for VitaPact. It required the ability to track both forwards and backwards through the supply chain and conduct product recalls for third-party audits. Within an integrated system, this proved extremely difficult and time-consuming. Since going live on JustFood software, VitaPact has been able to automate its recall processes with JustFood CRM module, share real-time and relevant customer data throughout their organization, and track all inventory, both where it came from and where it was used throughout their entire process. Another success story. And that really brings my portion of the presentation to an end. But if you would like to find out more about JustFood ERP, you can visit us at justfooderp.com. And I'll also be hanging around for questions at the end of the webinar. So thank you very much. And Jesse, I believe it's back to you.
Okay, thank you, Richard and Michael, for an excellent and informative presentation. We will now be taking questions on today's webinar, and I'd like to remind our audience and encourage our audience to submit questions at any time by typing into the space provided on your screen. Here's just a reminder that all questions that are not discussed in the question and answer segment will be answered by representatives of Ultra Consultants and Industry Built at a later time. Our first question, which appears directed toward Michael, asks, how can JustFood help me if I use multiple lot numbers of one ingredient in one production run?
Sure. Yeah, so I mean that's I'd say a very common situation in the food industry where you might order. I think I used salt as an example in one of my slides. So you might order a pallet of salt and you get several bags, and the reality is not all the bags are going to be the same lot number on that pallet. So absolutely, you can retrieve that information. You can bring it into the system. It really sort of depends. You have options. It depends on how you want to handle it. If you want to track in each individual lot number, you absolutely can. But think about taking a 50-bag pallet of salt and breaking it down and tracking each. That's a lot of manual work. So you can assign it an internal lot number that represents all the external lot numbers on that pallet, and move with it from there. So it sort of widens your recall window. So it's a bit of a risk to take at that time, but it certainly helps you be a little more efficient with your lot traceability at the beginning, which then rolls through the entire process.
Thank you, Michael. It looks like our next question will be directed toward you as well, and asks, does JustFood's WMS only work on handheld devices?
Okay, great question. So our WMS, that being our warehouse management system, which the product itself is actually called JustFood Floor. No, it does not work only on handheld devices. It actually works on any device that has a browser. So it could be your PC, it could be your desktop, laptop, Mac. It doesn't matter. iPhone, Android, whatever has a browser, internet connection, it can work with that. The idea with JustFood Floor is that you've got a barcode scanner attached to it, which helps you scan labels, GS1 or otherwise, quickly and efficiently, which is a bit of a shortcut. So we don't see many users using, PCs, Floor and PCs, although it is very possible. What I have seen in the past as well, which was pretty neat actually, was a customer had a very high-end touchscreen, waterproof, weatherproof tablet mounted on a wall in one of the production environments, which was a little bit on the expensive side, and then there was a $20 Amazon barcode USB scanner attached to it, and that's how they utilized the functionality of barcode scanning in an environment that was subject to extreme temperatures, water, dust, everything. So it's pretty interesting, but no, it's not limited to just handheld devices.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. It looks like one more question for you before we get to a few questions for Rich. And Michael, the next question asks, does the quality module force a user to complete a quality task, or can they skip over it?
Yeah, great question. So the short answer is no, but maybe. And the reason for that is it all depends on how you set up the quality procedure. So there's sort of multi-levels to it, but a quality procedure is as the list of questions. Think of it as the list of questions you're going to ask if that particular step is being taken accordingly. And if you set that as a critical control point, which can be triggered off and on as you're building that quality procedure, the audit itself will prevent the task from continuing on. So if you set up a critical control point to inspect, let's say, lentils coming in off of a truck, because lentils is a popular choice. I use that example all the time because sometimes you can find stones in your batch of lentils. So a lot of companies will actually manually sift through their lentil order and make sure they don't have any stones in it. But if you set that particular item of lentils to be a critical control point, so that every time it's received, you must complete that check before it's actually put in available inventory, it will stop you. Whereas other quality audits you can set to just be created on a specific trigger, but you can come back to it at a later time and complete it if it's not critical to the path.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Rich, the first question for you asks, what are the ERP features to look for when it comes to improving document management?
So we talked a lot about the record keeping, right, and the binders that I showed photos of, right? So in order to move that traceability and compliance documentation into your business system, you have to set it up in a way that the information and the electronic signatures, et cetera, are non-modifiable. Okay, so whereas historically you would say scan a document and then just put it on your hard drive, from a document management perspective integrating into the ERP system, you would want to say the purchase order that you're receiving, the receiving paperwork would be scanned into the purchase order receipt record and tied into that and be non-modifiable. So that means a more robust and more complex set of system features underneath, so that the documentation that's stored is either stored in an encrypted or secure drive that's mapped into it, or actually stored in the database. Okay, so document management systems are becoming more and more critical feature, in particular in food and beverage, because of the need to move that stuff in. And so then in the future, you do your traceability, recall management. You want to be able to pull up the specific, say, manufacturing lot, click on that, and see all the inspection information that came in with it and tied into it. So that then when an auditor shows up from the FDA looking for compliance to the Food Safety Modernization Act, you can then, at a touch of a button, produce the documentation associated with your control points.
Excellent. Thank you, Rich. Our next question for you asks, what should a food system component manufacturer need to know to help its food processing customers integrate products with their ERP?
So we really didn't talk much about the Internet of Things, right? So IoT. So Internet of Things is the idea that devices on the plant floor, devices in the production process, need to also ultimately integrate into our control point and our capture points. So what are temperatures at specific places in the process? What's the volume that's going through? What are the operating parameters within the production process? So all these types of things, making that information available via internet accessible devices and sensors that are associated with those pumps and things, from my perspective, is a direction that we're going. Whereas historically, right, the control system was separate from the measurement system. That stuff continues to kind of integrate in together. So those are some things to consider, as well as design related to sanitation and improved sanitation and how to integrate into clean in place processes and stuff like that.
Excellent. Thank you, Rich. Well, it looks like we've come to the end of our questions for today's webinar. So that will conclude things for today. I want to be sure to thank everybody for attending today's webinar, and a special thank you to our speakers, Richard and Michael. And look out for an email with a link to access this webinar on demand within the next couple of days. As always, thank you and have a great day.